What is a realism and what is a liberalism? That means Professor John Meyer Schiemer says realists believe that power is the currency in international politics and that states care above all else about the balance of power, and the reason states care about the balance of power is because they operate in a world where there is no higher authority that can come to their rescue if they get in trouble, and at the same time they can never be sure that a really powerful state in that system won't come after them, won't attack them, and if that happens, of course, there is no one that they can turn to show what that mandates is that states be as powerful as possible relative to the other states in the system, and this is what drives the concern about the balance of power. Now, what drives many people in the West crazy about realism is that fact that it says that all states behave that way, democracies as well as authoritarian states as well as communist states. All states in effect are lack in an iron cage and behave roughly the same way as you can imagine. Most people in the West who are quite liberal want to believe that there is a difference between liberal democracies on one hand and authoritarian states on the other, but that is not the realist view, that is the liberal view. And let me just lay out very quickly the most prominent liberal theory, because I think it will be quite clear how it contrasts with realism. And that theory is a democratic peace theory, and it argues that in a world where you have lots of democracies, those democracies will not fight each other. In other words, those democracies, when they think about each other, won't worry about the balance of power the way realists say they will, but because they are liberal democracies, they will live in peace, or realists would not accept that argument. But in the liberal West, what is obviously going to be an argument or a theory that is very attractive. So I think in capsule form that summarizes the difference between realism and liberalism. So for me, what you are saying, I can clearly as two different models, but it immediately raises the question that does the mean that power is always might is always right, that power is always about if authority over others, does it leave room for higher ideals versus lower ideals? Another way of putting it is, there such a thing as a good nationalism, or is it always competitive and inclined to bear its fangs? Well, I like to argue that there are instances where doing the right thing, the moral thing, the correct thing from an ethical point of view is consistent with what is the correct thing to do from a realist point of view. In other words, if you go to war against Adolf Hitler, that is the morally correct foreign policy as well as the strategically correct foreign policy. And here we are talking about the United States during World War II. So the arrows are lined up in a very important way, but you sometimes run into circumstances where doing the strategically correct or the real realist way of acting is in conflict with what is correct from a moral point of view. And the realist argument is that in those cases you will act SEC according to the dictates of realism. And again, going back to World War II, the United States, as you know very well, formed a very close alliance with Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union, and worked closely with the Soviet Union to defeat Nazi Germany. Having a close alliance with the Soviet Union is not the ethically correct thing to do, but from a strategic point of view, it made eminently good sense. So we did it, and we, in the process, dressed up Joseph Stalin as a burgeoning Democrat, and we were hardly ever critical about the Soviet Union because of its political system, and we did all of this because the Soviets were our allies. We needed them to defeat Nazi Germany. So, a lot depends on whether ethical considerations and strategic considerations are in sync or at off.